Hello, David Zritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back to another Bond community. This is where we get to know individuals from all around the world that maybe you know and maybe you don't, but this is all to get to know them a little bit better. I am joined by a voice and now a face that I've known for probably better part of a year, Don Zuiderman from 00 Files. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I was actually wondering how you would pronounce my last name. So
was it okay?
Yeah, it was okay. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, no. What is it though? How do you really pronounce it?
We got to go through this. Well, you should say Zuiderman.
Zuiderman.
You don't have that vowel in English. You don't have the
ow. Like I just hurt myself. Zuiderman. Ooh.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm speaking with friends in Dutch and a non-Dutch speaker is listening to it, he's always wondering if we're mad at each other because we sound so harsh. I said, no, we're perfectly fine. It's just the way our language sounds. But yeah.
My wife is German, so you just, you sound like her.
German is very nice and soft. Sounds very intelligent. Yeah.
Well, you don't sound harsh at all, but I've got to start with some of the basics, and we're going to get to know you a little bit better. But for those who haven't heard, I do want to talk about my experience with the 00 Files, and then I really want you to kind of describe to everybody, the 00 Files. But I came upon the 00 Files and was immediately taken by a few things. First of all, you have some of the best production value. And it sounds strange to say that with a podcast. You think of that with a video or a film or a TV show, production value. But you all really take your time with the planning, the agenda, the conversation, the editing, the sound, the music. It really, each show, and you come out quite regularly, each show really takes you for an amazing ride. And I feel like when I listen to it, no matter what the topic, I feel like I've had a really quality experience. And the other thing that I like about the 00 Files is, and I've said this, I think on your anniversary/birthday show, is you are not restrictive in any way. You will talk about everything, anything. I could tell that you love each other, but you'll also take the mickey out of each other. And I just, first, let's start out with, is this kind of the reaction that you've been hearing from people?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, a few people have said that to me about the production quality. Can I ask you, what was the first show that you listened to?
I actually heard Man Talk first. Somebody
for the first time.
Yeah.
Someone sent it to you.
They did. So I had done, so I was doing these Bond communities and somebody said, have you heard the 00 Files? And I said, I saw it come up on my library, but I haven't dove into it. And to be totally frank, there was a lot of discussion about books and authors, and that's not my cup of tea usually. But then the Man Talk came up and I'm like, okay, now you have my interest.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that was something, I don't know, we wanted to find some sort of show on which we could just, talk about anything really, just like a couple of friends, or four friends, I should say, talk about whatever we like. But, and we were looking for something to go in between the film reviews. So where do I start?
How did it begin? Was it four friends saying we want to talk?
So I think it all started about 2 years ago. And I was already always a fan of podcasts for a long time. I've been listening to it. And I had two podcasts for my work. I work in education. And I've done that for a few years. And then it just bled to death. Is that how you say it in English? It bordered, or it just disappeared, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I started listening to, I was less focused on work and more focused on my hobbies, and I was subscribing to James Bond podcasts and everything. And all of a sudden I thought, why don't I make a James Bond podcast with a few friends that are actually in the Netherlands? I think it always works best if you actually sit around the table, because you can look at each other and the audio recording is much better that way, and the interaction is as well. But I didn't know anybody, because I'm the only James Bond nut that I know. So it was, I think about 2 years ago, I wrote to a Dutch James Bond website, jamesbond.nl, I think it is, which is a group of people. And I just asked them, why don't you have a podcast yet? And they said, well, I'll ask the others and see what they think about it. And 3 of them responded, let's give it a go. And those were, I'll call them by their English names, Tyler, Anthony, and Martin. And we never met. We just, we set a date. We came together to record Quantum of Solace, a random film for a random review. We did the whole thing in Dutch. And through doing that, we got to know each other a little bit. But it was also awkward. You know, it's like the first time with everything. It's like you get to know each other. You don't know what kind of jokes you can make and everything. But we seemed to like it. So, you know, we decided to do another one a month later. And we kept doing that. And like you said, I pride myself on putting a lot of work into post-production. I really like the editing. But it can take up lots of your time, as you probably know. Video is even worse. If you want to edit video, that's even worse than audio. But it felt, because we were having these statistics that you can see how many people approximately listen to your show, and I was putting in hours and hours and hours of editing. And we got about 50, 60 listeners for each show because it was in Dutch. And we said, well, we really like what we're doing, but we think we can, I don't know, expand our audience a bit. So we asked James Bond Netherlands, would it be all right if we would do them in English? And they weren't too happy with that because of they're the Dutch community. And so after a while, we really wanted to do that, and they really wouldn't let us. So we thought, well, okay, well then, you know, it was like a breakup or like a divorce is what you might call it. But we just decided in the end, okay, let's do our own thing then. And by this time, I think it was about 6 months after we initially started, we really got to know each other a bit, and we were more relaxed. And all of a sudden, I think it was Anthony, the next film that we randomly drew with our final Dutch review was Live and Let Die. And then the next one, Live and Let Die, we just did it in English out of the blue. And that was a bit weird. But yeah, it's I think it works out fine.
Did your audience count climb significantly once you did it in English?
Well, now it does. It took us a while, but at the beginning it was we're like the millionth James Bond podcast out there. So what do you bring that is new or refreshing? I don't know. All the time I kept saying we mustn't do this to become popular or to get a high rating or anything. All I want is I want to have a good reason once a month to analyze a Bond film in depth. Just go balls deep, like Tom Sears would say from James Bond Radio. Try to get as much out of it as you can, and then just sit around and have a wonderful evening. Yeah, that's like the main goal. If that works, then you're having fun, and then you have a reason to keep doing it. And I hope that energy and that enthusiasm transpires somehow. I'm editing all the podcasts afterwards. I'm post-production. So the other guys, they see each other once a month approximately, but I listen to them all the time because pretty much 2 or 3 or 4 evenings a week, I'm listening to one of our shows, editing it, going through it. So they're in my ears quite a lot. Yeah. But
I will tell you, the relationship between the 4 of you translates extremely well to the listener. You can, and again, you know, it's 4 people just hanging out and joking with and at each other, which that's the part that I love, is when you kind of rib each other a little bit in a playful way.
Yeah, it's always fun.
But even the anniversary show, you could really tell when you were doing the gift giving that there was a lot of a connection and passion amongst you. In fact, one of the questions I had for you was, I know you do this once a month, you all get together. Paint the picture, because we just hear your voices. Paint the picture of the room. Are you drinking beers, and are people driving from hours away? Like, tell me behind the scenes a little.
It's a small country. So we all live apart. So for Dutch people, we actually have to make an effort. You know, I went to the States a couple of times, a long time ago, but if you had to drive like 6 or 8 hours, it's like, yeah, it's very close by. It's like, no, it's 6 or 8 hours. You'd be on the opposite side of Europe if you do that. But for Dutch people, we have to make an effort. So there's Tyler. He lives in Delft, which is close to The Hague. There's Martin, who lives in Ede, and we've never been to his place. I think he's hiding something.
Ooh,
I'm not
clearly.
sure, but he might be hiding something.
Yeah.
No, apparently he has these annoying birds that keep on tweeting all the time. So we can't.
Maybe they're eating all the bug infestation.
Yeah. Hopefully. But we can't. We'd never recorded at his place yet. And then there's Anthony. He lives in Eindhoven, which is a very technical city in the south. And well, let's say approximately it takes about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get to one of our places. But so we divide it up. So 1 month it's at my place. Another month we record at Tyler's and Anthony's to divide the traveling. And it's actually quite crappy. So it's a good thing that you can't actually see where we record, because I have a wonderful audio set, but it's always very tiny space, especially at Tyler's. And we sit around this tiny, I think it's an IKEA table, and it's wobbly, and we need an extra table for the laptop and another table for what do you call that, the audio mix and everything.
Yeah.
And then every now and then during recording we just have to pause because a cat makes some noise or something else happens, or there's one episode in which you can hear my daughter crying in the background. I couldn't edit it out, but things happen during recording, and I try to edit it out as best as I can, but yeah, it's we would call it like it's very amateur hour. It's just basically coming together and having a laugh.
Right. I think it's actually, I have to disagree with you. I mean, at least from our point of view, it may feel like that from a perfectionist producer, but the one thing that I hear from others, forget about my opinion, is that it is one of the most professional because it's a bit of a variety hour. For example, you'll stop and do quizzes every now and then, or you'll stop and do something entirely different, or a vignette.
The reason about that is what I want is what I've learned through my work. I'm a college teacher, and one thing I try to teach my students is always think about the journey the person has that comes into your classroom, because everything is clear inside your head,
right?
But the other person is like a blank canvas. So the journey has to be as smooth as possible, and you really have to take that person through. Because one of the things that my students, and I teach students to become primary school teachers.
Oh.
And one of the problems they always have is, how do you explain something, or how do you keep attention, or how do you make smooth transitions and everything? And sometimes me and my colleagues, we have to give lectures, which last for about an hour or maybe even 2 hours. And then our students are always asleep or doing other things. They're checking their Facebook or whatever, but they're not immersed or focused on what I'm trying to teach them. And then I started thinking, well, why is it that people pay 50 euros, 100 euros for expensive tickets to cabaret show, theater show, or whatever, and they can listen to one person, a stand-up comedian, for instance. They can easily listen to one of those for 2 hours without doing anything else, and they pay lots of money for that. Yeah. So what can you learn from that? So apparently someone needs to have a good story, needs to grab you, and needs to guide you through whatever it is they want to tell you. So again, with the podcast, if I think about that, what would I like to listen to?
Right.
And I would like to have an immersive experience. I'm thrown into some sort of subject. So we start with a random quote. Well, not completely random, but somewhat random. Then you go to our theme, which is recognizable. Right, I know these. These are the 00 files. So we get an introduction. And we just talk you through what's going to happen. But then, for the sake of variety, and I'm quoting Skyfall here, I think, you need some diversion. So liven it up. Liven it up, yeah. Liven it up, that's the way. And don't take it too seriously. Maybe that's part of the Dutch blandness, I don't know. But yeah, you can take the mick out of anybody and anything.
Yeah.
So that's good. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's a bit of thematically how I treat my channel. And I've always told people that if I'm not telling a story where you can immediately make yourself a character in that story that I'm telling. I'm going to lose you within the first 30 seconds to a minute. But it's the reason why in many of my live interviews or even my discussions about some of the clothes of the brands, I will constantly look at the camera and I say, that is the third person in the room. That's the other person in the room, because I want to bring you in. I don't want you to be looking at the frame of your computer or your phone. I want to take you. You said it beautifully. I want to create an immersive moment where you feel like you're a character of the story and then take you for a ride.
Yeah. At the beginning, I was a bit worried because 3 of those guys said they wanted to do a podcast with James Bond Netherlands. And I was thinking, ooh, 4 people. Those are 4 different voices. That's going to be a lot to distinguish between. Right. But I think it works out. As soon as you've listened to a few episodes, you kind of figure out whose voice belongs to who. Or I think we're distinctive enough. So that's okay. But that was one of my worries. And there was another thing I wanted to say, but it eludes me. I come back.
Well, let's talk about the 4 guys, because again, you work very well. I think one of the things I've heard from others, not just me, but I feel it as well, is that each one does bring a distinct personality, but they all do have a personality, because you do have, and I'm just going to say this, not just James Bond, you do have certain podcasts when you have a lot of people, some bring a little bit more excitement, and some bring a little bit more subject matter expertise than others, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. So do you guys sit around together and talk about, all right, guys, this is going to be the content of the next 3 blogs? I mean, how do you come up with that?
What we do, well, there are 2 things. There's a basic planning. What are we going to do for the next few months? We have a wish list of things that we would still like to do. There are only, as you know, 24 films, and we're going through them rapidly. So we are thinking about keeping it durable, sustainable. But the basic planning, we're not that far ahead. I think it's January now, and we haven't planned until March. So that's pretty much it. It's
pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay. But then what we do is we check our diaries. When can we record next? Whose place are we going to go to now? And who would like to host the next podcast? And we're just trying to divide it as even as if we can. And then basically, if, for instance, Martin says he'll host that podcast, it's his gig. He can do whatever he likes. If he doesn't want to ask any trivia questions, fine. If he wants to start in a completely different way, fine. But somehow we've grown into, within a podcast, a certain rhythm. So I think that's now become the template, so to say. But yeah, everybody, I think it has a unique, well, obviously a unique personality. Whenever someone wants to ask something of a background question, they tend to ask me, how much money is that nowadays? Or where exactly is this place located on a map? Because I spend way too much hours into my preparation. But I'm always amazed. What especially amazes me is how the others look at these films, because sometimes something is so very obvious for me. For instance, we're going to record Thunderball soon, which is obviously one of the best films out there. Well, apparently not to the other guys.
To some people, right.
Yeah, exactly. I read the same thing with The Man with the Golden Gun and recently Moonraker, which are obviously awful films. Well, not awful, but... And then you have Martin and Tyler that completely love those films. It's like, really? But how? And what I noticed, especially with the Bond films, is that nostalgia plays such a huge factor into how did you grow up? What films did you constantly watch? Yeah. What role did it play in your family when you were young? And it's just funny to see that one franchise, one fictional character can divide people that much. But still, we can just make fun of it and have fun and have a laugh about it. And
well, the 4 of you, the reality is the 4 of you are a microcosm of the entire Bond community.
Almost,
because I've said that nostalgia, or the first Bond movie you saw, or the first video game that introduced you to a Bond movie, has a lot to do with your affection of it, or your disaffection, if that's a word, and it's not. All right, so I've got to kind of diverge here a little bit because I've got a series of questions for you that
Sure.
these are things that I listen to you guys and I'm curious about, and I think some of the people that are watching this right now might be curious. So you mentioned earlier that you're not in it for the view counts. You're certainly not in it for the money or popularity or anything like
No, we don't do
that.
it for the money.
Right.
Definitely not.
And I always do that too. I laugh when people say that. But the reality is that you have become much more popular. Double O Files in general. What was your first inkling that, oh my gosh, we have a global audience? People are actually watching and listening to us. What was your first inkling?
Oh, that's a good question. Back in May, I was at Peace Gloria for the 50th anniversary of Majesties, and JBR was on a hiatus. And a few people, I've been on a few JBR trips before even starting the podcast. And one or two of them had listened to one of our shows. And that got mentioned somehow. And another person heard that. And he said, really, you do a James Bond podcast? And I had like a huge stack of business cards with me because I was thinking I'm going to go to Peace Gloria and there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of James Bond fans. So I have to give away these cards. And he said, well, give me a card and I'll give it a try. And I think that was the first time that I felt like other people start slowly becoming aware that we do something, but we're still, I'm not sure how it is for other people. I'm not sure how it is for you, but we don't get that many emails. We don't get that many comments or reactions. So I'm still surprised when I hear that somebody is actually listening to our show. I had that last week. I contacted somebody on Facebook, someone who did a quiz on another podcast, and I congratulated her. You did very well. And she said, oh, I love your podcast. And I'm like, really? You're listening to our show as well? Okay. Why? That's also one of my reactions. Like,
well, I have an advantage over you in the sense that the value, the power of the Bond Experience is our YouTube channel because it's videos, obviously. So people recognize my face. Yeah. When they hear you, they may recognize your voice, but chances are they won't recognize your face.
I like that, though. I like that.
Right. You have some anonymity there. But the other thing is, especially on the YouTube channel or even our Instagram or Facebook, we're constantly having engagement. So there's comments, there's submissions, there's emails. But that's because that's how we set up the Bond Experience. With yours, it's more of and any podcast, I would say this, it's more of I'm going to listen to you on my commute, but I'm not sitting there on my commute suddenly punching in comments. Yeah. It'd be great if they did.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We have a life as well. All of us
do.
Yeah. Recently we talked about this because it's going to be an interesting year. I'll talk about that in a moment. But so we had this discussion because, like you mentioned, we churn out these podcasts and it takes a lot of my time, especially post-production. And we talked about it, like, how do we keep this sustainable? And because I think the last few months we had 4 podcasts coming out, and my mind sometimes is going mad because I'm preparing my next interview, reading another book because I have an interview in a couple of weeks after that. Then I'm preparing the new podcast. I'm still editing 3 shows, and it's constantly rotating like that. And I have a job, almost full-time job, and I have a family as well. So I asked the other guys, look, this is not going to work out for the long term if we're going to keep continuing like this. And they very honestly said, well, I know what you're saying, but this is just one of my 10 hobbies. So I can't really do that much more. And one of the other guys said, well, I really don't want to edit audio. And another one said, I don't have any more time. So how do we keep it sustainable? And we're slowly going to bring back the amount of podcasts a little bit to make it doable and keep having some fun. And you might notice I'm sitting in my bedroom nowadays, because a couple of months ago, I had my wonderful James Bond man cave with posters and memorabilia and books and everything. But we're expecting a 3rd child.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
Wow.
I'm super excited about that. But it's also going to affect the podcast
Yeah.
because, I have 2 kids and they'll be 10 and 8, and then I'll have a baby.
Wow.
And, it's we're trying to make space in our house. The man cave had to go. It's now the baby room. And I don't know what's going to happen time-wise. But, my wife, she was very supportive. She said, I know this is part of your identity almost. I'm on video now, right? So
Yeah.
I slowly started preparing for our Moonraker book review.
Okay.
Slowly started. So here we have book number 1 with the markers.
Yeah.
Book number 2 with the markers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, this is an interview that I have next week. This is another book that I'm going to need for the book review. Here's another book. It's all right here.
Wow.
So literally hours each day go into the 00 files.
Yeah.
To come back to your question, we do the podcast. We have a Twitter account, which is something that 3 of us like to do. The rest is just extra.
Yeah.
We do a bit of Instagram. We do a bit of Facebook. We do a bit of... I think Martin has started putting up the MP3s in YouTube as well. But that's it, It's still a hobby. Still a hobby.
Well,
and
it is.
Really enjoy it.
And it's interesting, too, because I think from a perception standpoint, a lot of people take a look at this, and it's a hobby, but it's also, and maybe this is where your wife was going, it's also therapy. I mean, it really is a beautiful, wonderful escape and outlet. And I got into a conversation with my wife not too long ago, and she goes, at the heart of it, why do you love this so much? And she goes, I get the Bond thing, like, and I said, you know something? I think at the heart of it, so many of us are creators. We love to take nothing and create something. And we do this in a lot of creative, venues. We do it with people, without people. And by the way, from a creation standpoint, one of the questions I had for you and for your merry men is, are you going to create scenarios in 2020 where you all travel together or go to events? Like there's a premiere coming up and there's probably a lot of events.
About this. We talked about the premiere, we don't have any plans yet because I don't know, actually. Another reason, we all have families or girlfriends, and we have, if you have a holiday, then you're going to spend your time there. I invited a couple of those. Whenever I get an invite from Martijn Mulder, he has this new weird trip coming up to France, or also the Majesty's 50th. I send it to the other guys, but they look at it and they say, I'm not going to spend my money on that, or I already have this vacation planned or that vacation planned. Sure. So the last one was the France trip when No Time to Die premieres, and he wants to go to Paris and then Monte Carlo, I believe.
Yes.
And it's about 2,500 euros.
Yes.
And then they said, well, that's just lovely, but I'm not going to do it. So then I said, well, why don't we, and this is long-term planning, 2022, it will be the 25th anniversary of Tomorrow Never Dies. We can drive to Hamburg, which is about 5 hours.
Okay.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Go to that hotel, spend a night or two there. We'll see. It's a long-term planning.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we may potentially see some of you in London. We may not. Or...
for the premiere, probably not. No,
okay.
What for the No Time to Die premiere is we're probably just going to watch it at our local cinemas because that's easier.
It's so much easier.
We all want to see the film probably at least 3 or 4 times. I want to see it on opening night.
Right.
I want to see it with my son, or he desperately wants to see it.
Oh, nice.
I'm going through the Bond films with him for a couple of years now, and we've reached Quantum now, so we're gonna neatly end up with No Time to Die. And then, we semi-agreed to have a recording session on the 5th of April. So it comes out here on the 2nd of April.
Okay.
And then the 5th of April, I believe, is a Saturday.
Yeah.
So we might watch it beforehand, or at least the days before that, and then record like a first impression show, something like that.
I think that's fantastic. I think Yeah, that's a quick turnaround too to do that.
Yeah, that would be, but then still post production, so it'll probably come out a week after that.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's more like
and I do, whenever I go on a trip, I do make a video. I make location videos, so I have a bunch of those now on my personal YouTube. When I visit Piz Gloria, that's like 45 minutes. You can follow my entire trip to Piz Gloria.
Gosh. We will put a link to that here. I did not know that you had that.
Well, I can send you the links. I think I have about 5 location videos when I go to Berlin, when I go to London, the UK, France, when I dragged my family through France last holiday.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're not sick and tired of my voice and my head, you can. There's hours and hours you can delve into.
No one's going to get sick and tired of it. All right. Yeah. So you mentioned, obviously, traipsing through 2020 in a really methodical way to make sure that you all have a life and you can have extra babies and all these wonderful things. But what can the viewer, especially the new people that are going to watch this and go, 00 Files, I'm going to give them a try. What can we expect in 2020 from the 00 Files?
Well, obviously, we'll try to get a film review out each first of the month and see if we can keep that up. In between, there'll be more Man Talk and Elements episodes. And that's probably the most basic thing. Let me just go to my basic planning that we have here. So there are going to be a few more interviews. Obviously, what I'll try always is if I see that an author has a book coming out, I tend to bug them beforehand. Like, I see you have a book coming out in a couple of months. Can I have a proof version? Read it. We record before publishing date, and then the podcast can come out almost simultaneously.
Nice.
And like I showed you the books, I like the films. I really like the films, but I love the books. I love the Fleming books.
Good for you.
And so I really want to do Moonraker before the baby arrives. And I'm not sure if you listened to our book review of Live and Let Die, but I'm so proud of that. And it cost me like 3 months of my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's extensive. It's a huge project. And just the script, it was like almost 100 pages, that everything, because I use all those background books, and it put me off starting Moonraker for a while. So now, a few weeks ago, I finally felt confident enough to start looking at the book Moonraker. But I'm going through it. I'm halfway chapter 2 right now, so I still have everything to go, but I'm loving it. It's just 1 or 2 sentences that Fleming writes. And you asked earlier, what is it about Bond that gets you, or something like that? And honestly, whenever there's a new Star Wars trailer or a new superhero trailer out there, I don't even watch those. I haven't seen the last 2 Star Wars films yet.
That's okay.
And yeah, I sure, it's fine. And whenever there's a Marvel film, I'll wait till it comes out.
Yeah.
I desperately want to see Knives Out, but I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to wait till it shows on Netflix or something. But when that trailer dropped for No Time to Die, and you press the play button, and you hear the first seconds of the music kicking in, and that shot when it zooms in on Matera, I don't know what happens, but I get tingly all over my body. It's like, this is magical. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
When I get a new comic book, like the James Bond Origins or something, it's like each and every edition is like a new sacred book. It's like, look at it. It's just, I don't know. I can't understand it. Maybe it's the whole secret spy theme, whatever. I don't know why James Bond has that effect on me.
You have an emotional connection, like the rest of us, to it. I mean, you said it. It's nostalgia. It's some of those most indelible, important memories of your life are wrapped up in this character. So it rushes all back. It's like, it's like a drug.
Consciously, I can't explain it.
Yeah.
I can't rationalize it.
Yeah, but you should go see a psychiatrist like the rest of us.
I'd rather not.
No.
A psychiatrist prescribes medicine, right? And
They
a
do,
psychologist,
but only good
you
medicine.
can just talk to a psychologist.
Yeah, but this is like psychology. What you and I are doing.
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah.
This is
If
just
only
good.
you looked like Léa Seydoux, that would be perfect.
Yeah. It doesn't look good on a
Oh.
form. Speaking of that, I always like to end these with something that tells everybody a little bit about your personality, but kind of in a secondhand way. So I'm going to set up a scenario for you, and I want you to play along. So this is kind of the game portion, if you will, of the video. But in this case, it's a little different because you're not just speaking for yourself. I want you to also, quote unquote, speak for the other 3 members of your team.
But have you listened to the other 3? They don't know what they're talking about.
You're going to watch this.
I know. They can take it.
So you're sitting around on a Saturday. Sitting around on a Saturday, and the phone rings, and you look at it. You don't recognize who's calling, and you pick it up, and you're like, hello. And on the other end is a senior executive from Eon Productions. And they say, Don, hello, this is such and such. And we have to tell you, over the last year, we've loved from afar the 00 Files. You've done such a wonderful, authentic job that as a gift to you, we are going to give you and the 3 other members of your team any Bond experience you want. It could be going to a location. It could be being in a film. It could be hang gliding with a cigar in your mouth. It doesn't matter. What is that Bond experience that you have Eon gift to the team?
Fantasyland, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Total fantasy.
This is not easy. I have to speak for the team. So one of my personal dreams is to have a month on Jamaica. And I'm not sure if I'll be able to in my life. I'm just not sure. So this is very high on that list.
At GoldenEye, at the resort?
Yeah, definitely. But not. I want to see the whole island. So spend a week at GoldenEye, learn how to snorkel. But I also want to do the donkey riding through the mountains and go to Shark Bay. What was it? Blood Bay, Orange Bay. I don't know, on the coast, and I don't know.
Kirin Bay.
The whole thing. I want to go to Hotel Sans Souci and everything. But if you ask me what would the 00 Files like, well, I'm sure they won't mind.
Yeah, they would love that.
Yeah, sure. Bring the families along and everything. But what would be maybe even cooler is actually what you said, is to actually be part of Bond canon. So somehow, well, as much as I would love to play a role in any of the James Bond films, I'd probably make a fool out of myself. So I'm not sure. You have me doubt here. This is a difficult question, David.
Well, you could have the 4 of you, if you wanted to have everybody have a role, is the 4 of you could be 00s just sitting in a row. You don't have to do anything.
Oh, that's rubbish. I want to have lines and I want to have action and everything, obviously. I don't want to be that random henchman number 17 in the background. I mean, what good is that? But I'd like to be like a Bond villain or something, but be a really good one as well.
Yeah.
But the pressure. I don't know.
I'm gonna stick with Jamaica. What do you think?
That's a safe option, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If I can bring my family along.
All right. I'm gonna totally blow your mind. What about a month-long trip to Jamaica because you're filming? The 4 of you are filming a role in a James Bond movie.
Sounds about right. Yeah, sounds about right.
Because why not be greedy?
Oh, that's excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've done it successfully.
And all the other Bonds are there as well for a meet and greet. Like, obviously.
George Lazenby and you kicking back a few. Why not?
Yeah, I met George. I met George at Peace Gloria. Yeah. So check bucket list.
And
right
he is
there.
Bond in real life. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
That was perfect. Don, thank Thank you. Well, I wanted to end it with a tough one, of course, but thank you so much, because this was, the whole intent of this video was, number one, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better personally, but number two, the people watching this, I want them to go to Double O Files with, if you've already done it, with a different view of who you all are and a different personality around it, and obviously
I'll
Matt's
probably
face.
scared everybody away.
But also, if people haven't heard the Double O Files, there's a link below. You've got to go check them out. Put them on subscribe. It's a beautiful surprise when you get up in the morning, you get into your car or you're driving home, and you click on your podcast library, and boom, there's a Double O Files. I can promise everybody, and I don't do this to everyone, I can promise you will be entertained while you listen to them. So thank you for all that you're doing.
You're very welcome. Thank you
all
for
right,
this
Don,
chat.
We're going to sign off. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
This has been David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience, and we will see you all very soon. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond Experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.